Life over coffee. Conversations for transformation.
In the summer of 2018, we were visiting Lucia's sister in Minnesota when she told us about a nearby Trump rally in Fargo, North Dakota. I don't know the exact distance, maybe an hour or so away. Our van just so happened to need a repair, and Fargo was the nearest Toyota dealer, so we decided to attend the Trump rally while we were in Fargo getting our van worked on. It was a memorable night. I would say that it was one of those bucket list events. All of us, I think, should have the opportunity to see a president. I've had the opportunity to see two or three, I guess. I saw Jimmy Carter, I saw Ronald Reagan, and I think Trump would be the third one. Also, our family likes to do adventure things. When we're all here, and of course the kids were younger, we do adventure eating, adventure driving, just go somewhere. We like making memories. That was the essential thing. And so it was really hard to pass up going and seeing a president of the United States, and in this case it happened to be Donald Trump. More good news, the event was actually free for anyone, so the attendees were asked to order their tickets through their mobile phones. They gave away 2 passes per phone number, and so we ordered 6 of 3 phones. And ironically, as we entered the building that night, I couldn't find anyone to give my tickets to, and so I asked a police officer who was standing over here. He didn't know anything about the tickets. We had printed them off on pieces of 8 by 11 paper. We had 5 of them, 5 of us. So he directed me to a staffer, and I asked her, and she said, we don't want those. And so I followed up with, what was this ticket thing all about anyway? And she said it was for tracking purposes. They did background checks using our phone numbers. Now, here's the thing, that creates a tension. Obviously, I don't want anyone tracking me. That's just not something that I am into. But in that case, I appreciated that they actually used the ticket process as part of their security measures, because I thought then, and of course we have learned later, that it can be rather dangerous hanging out with President Trump, but probably any president. With all the hostility toward President Trump, it was not a minor concern to be near him. And I thought about that going in the building, never knowing what someone might do. And so while I don't like to be tracked, I was glad that they did the background checks and they were trying to be as secure as they possibly could. They scheduled the president for 7 p.m. that evening. So we finished with the Toyota place, the repair, at 2 in Fargo, North Dakota. So we thought we would drive over to Shields Arena, which is the closed stadium there. It seats about 6,000 people. So we would see if there was any action. It was 2 o'clock. We had time. We were going to drive by and then shoot down to downtown Fargo to see what that was about. So by 2:30 p.m. we arrived at Shields Arena, and they had already wrapped the parking lot with people. Now, we found out later that there were approximately 5,000 people in line 4.5 hours before the event even started. The doors opened at 6. The event started at 7. Here we are at 3 o'clock. There's 5,000 people in the parking lot. They only permitted 6,000 people in the building, and we were the last 500 to get in. We would not have made it inside if we had arrived any later, and so I told the family, I said, we're not going downtown Fargo, our original plan. We were just going to drive by, check things out, come back later, get in line. But it was apparent that our plan was not going to work, so we parked and we got in line with the swelling multitude. There were so many cars and people. It was really a challenge to find the end of the line. Eventually, we made it. We met our new parking lot buddies for the next 4 hours. And we stood in 90-degree North Dakota heat under the sun. It was a beautiful, clear day, and so we stood there for 4 hours. The vendors were out in force. They were selling pins and bears and hats and T-shirts, anything that you could put a president's face on. They pretty much had it, plus all the expected snappy cliches, T-shirts and stuff with the sayings on it. I was chatting with one lady who happened to be black. She was from Columbia, South Carolina, which is 90 miles from where we live. Been there many times. She's in Fargo, North Dakota with us. Kind of odd. She told me she follows the president around the country selling her wares, and she makes a pretty good living at it from what she was telling me. I had total respect for her. She was emblematic of the American way. I mean, think of an idea, implement your plan, make a living. She added that she liked the president's capitalistic perspectives, and so she was doing quite well. Now, noticeably, she was one of only a handful of black people that I saw, but admittedly, there are not that many, as I understand it, dark-skinned people in North Dakota, so it was predominantly a white crowd. They opened the doors at 4 p.m. We snaked around the parking lot for 2 hours, inching our way toward the entrance, literally 2 hours. And we didn't know at the time, but yeah, there were like 5,000 people in front of us. The police and the Secret Service were everywhere. There were dogs, German Shepherds all over the place. There were rows of porta potties, EMS, plenty of water. It was well organized and everyone was kind. I talked to a dozen police officers throughout the evening, thanking them for their dedication and care for us and our country. Again, thank you for the background checks. I just a little uncomfortable being around him because of the hostility that tends to follow everywhere he goes. The police officers, they were super pleasant, they were grateful, they were engaging. The building was nearly overflowing by the time we made it through the doors. I was glad to be part of the 6,000, but I was sad for the thousands who could not make it in, because I turned around and I looked and there was literally the same number of people waiting to get in as when we got there at 3 o'clock, because I could see where we were standing way over there. And so there were at least 5,000 plus people who could not get in the door. It was just really remarkable. It was a historic event for our children, again, to see a president of the United States. We love America, and so we make much of these things. And they perceived the magnitude of the moment. They were grateful to be there. There were a few preliminary speakers who were before the president came out, starting at 7 p.m. He came out later. The music was loud. It was eclectic. They played classic rock tunes. They played country songs. They had one operatic classic. The waves started spontaneously as the crowd was in hyper mode to see the president. I mean, it was quite the loud party for several hours. It was deafening when he came from behind the giant flag draped at the back of the stage. And he strolled, he swaggered, he pointed, he clapped, he did his thing. I imagine you've all seen it by now. Soaking in every moment as he made his way to the podium. I mean, there's no question the man knows how to enter a room. He is an entertainer. And with "I'm proud to be an American" blaring to a bunch of conservatives, I don't think that it could have been more raucous than what it was. The president was everything that you would expect. He knows how to work a crowd. He knows how to push all the right buttons. He knows how to entertain an audience. Politics aside, he's an excellent entertainer. I told a friend that I was glad I taught our children a few curse words, because our president had no inhibitions about dropping them. That was the only negative. I just don't appreciate that. But fortunately, where our children were at that age, we had already walked through a theology of language, and so we can kind of clean that up afterwards. President Trump spoke for an hour, which, I mean, he could have said everything that he needed to say in 30 minutes, but the crowd was so positively reactive that he stopped several times, but that's also a speaking tick or a speaking point or to way to work the crowd, basically, is what I'm saying. They were clapping, chanting, hollering. We hung out about an hour after the event so that we could get some pics at the stage. I also wanted to see the whole process, breaking down everything, packing up everything. There were interviews going on with different people. It was an opportunity to interact with folks who were milling around, and that's one of my favorite things to do, is to meet strangers and just start talking to them, so it was great. So anyway, that was our event. Everybody doesn't necessarily get to go to a rally of a president or a potential president, so I wanted to share those things with you. I do have some thoughts here. As I close up, I want to share those with you. Again, you can read all this at our website. The title of it is That Time I Went to a Trump Rally, if you want to read it. But here's a few thoughts. Number one, our president, he governed mostly conservative, which was a pleasant surprise. Had no idea how he was going to govern in 2015. Before his election, there was much concern over who would be better for our country. It seemed like a lesser of two evils kind of thing. He's an entertainer who loves the spotlight. There's no question about that. Being the center of attention in the entire world. It seemed like a big ego trip for him, honestly. Number 3, he knows how to work a group of people. He's good at what he does, which partially explains why he says some of the outlandish things that he does. He's riffing for the crowd. The downside is that everything he says comes under scrutiny, and his enemies dissect it and disseminate it for their purposes. And so there you go. Number 4, the rhetoric is part of who he is. It's not appropriate. I don't like it, but it comes with the package, and nobody's going to change him. Number 5, leadership is a stewardship issue. Whether you're leading one person, a family, a nation, you have a responsibility to lead well. Leaders have followers, and so the implication is very clear to steward that well. I don't think he does. Number 6, it's imperative for leaders to understand their influence on others. If you disparage people, many of the followers will emulate that kind of self-righteous arrogance. Careful communication is a critical quality for leaders because of the adverse impact it can have on their constituency and also on their enemies. Jesus was clear in Matthew 7 that the judgments that you give out, basically, if I paraphrase here, if you dish it out, it's going to be dished back. And of course, we create that kind of adverse reciprocality because of how things are now. Number 7, President Trump seems to enjoy mocking his opponents, though many of his opponents have ungodly agendas, and we could go whataboutism here because they do similar things, but his communication style could be better. He is a provocateur. 8, there's no question that he has struck a chord with many Americans. The incrementalization of the destruction of the moral fabric of our country during my lifetime has created a visceral reaction from conservative Americans. Number 9, President Trump is tapping into this pent-up unrest and fear that many Americans have felt for decades. You perceive this low-grade anger, frustration, hostility, retaliation, and ridicule from the conservative right, which is why their leaders should steward the opportunity. Number 10, the Christians' hope and faith are not in our country, and the good news is that Christians have an opportunity to change how we discourse in the public square. We don't have to imitate the right's or the left's anger. We have a better person to emulate. His name is Jesus. Number 11, I'm glad Trump is somewhat of a conservative president. I don't care for the package per se that comes with him, but I'm also an imperfect conservative. There are a few things about me that are off-putting. Number 12, my greatest hope is not in our country or any president, but in Christ alone. At the same time, my agenda to impact as many lives as possible with his message. So I do hope our presidents, whomever they may be, will aid in this cause as they legislate in a way that gives me the freedom to share Christ. So there's a few thoughts on leadership and then our experience at the Trump rally. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thanks for joining us. Learn more and get access to other resources at lifeovercoffee.com.